Hello, all. This is Dr. Dave Maslach talking to you about reciprocity.com. The E is written with a 3. And in this particular video, I want to talk about should you do a PhD and whether a doctorate is actually a waste of your time. So if you don't know me, I'm a professor of innovation strategy and entrepreneurship, and I created this whole reciprocity project to give back as much as I possibly can. There were so many people that helped me out to get through graduate school that I decided to pay the favor forward and help you out. So it created this sort of sharing economy proofreading platform. Working on it, that's the whole reciprocity thing, and that's what reciprocity.com is. And then there's these YouTube videos. So what I'm going to do is just go through some common questions, I guess, in terms of whether doing a PhD actually makes a lot of sense for you. I think that there is some benefit, but at the same time, I'm really not shy about sort of talking about all the costs as well. If you watch the other videos on this channel, you will get into some of those particular issues. So it's a really difficult question. I'm not going to sort of sugarcoat that. And it really depends on each individual person whether you should do a PhD and whether it's a waste of time. It's really pretty much just your own personal decision. But here are some things to sort of think about. So is a doctorate a waste of time? From a financial perspective, it's going to take you a very, very long time to recoup the costs of you doing that particular degree. It's very expensive, not from the fact that it's expensive in terms of the tuition. It's usually much cheaper than any other tuition in terms of an MBA, for example, or a master's of nursing or something like that. But it is the opportunity cost. So what is that? That is the cost of you not pursuing your work for that amount of time. And it's going to take you a long time to do a PhD. It's going to take you, on average, I think the norm now is about 5 years of not earning any, like a large amount of money, right? You're going to make a PhD stipend when you are in the process, but it's not a lot of money compared to what you can do if you're working. However, if you're coming from another country or another position where the wages are much more lower, then it might not be nearly as much of a cost for you. But for me, it's my own personal experience. This is, I was an engineer and I decided to go back and do my PhD in business administration. So it was really, really costly from that perspective. However, so here's the thing. There is a tremendous amount of benefit that is difficult to quantify or put a monetary value on, right? So all of the implicit and non-monetary rewards are substantial, and there are some benefits that you get that you don't necessarily see when you're in the process that I can see now, but it wasn't until a long time after it. And it really comes down to the knowledge that you have earned that allows you to get more opportunities in the future. You see many more different things than you would have saw before. And it's just simply because you just know a lot more stuff, or you have many more different ideas on how the world might work. And so you can frame things in different ways and you see all sorts of opportunities, right? So a big benefit of me doing a PhD was doing this whole reciprocity project. It doesn't make me any sort of money at this moment, but I see that there's potential. And at the same time, I also am helping a lot of people by doing this. And I wouldn't have done that otherwise. I wouldn't have seen that opportunity, that there is this really big need for people to sort of get this information that they wouldn't have gotten otherwise. And the other big thing is that there's something that it's really hard to put on sort of monetary value on that feeling of being amazed, or that eureka moment. That's really fun to have that experience where you all of a sudden discovered something that nobody else has discovered. And that doesn't happen every day, and you have to toil away for a long time before you get that sort of moment of discovery. But it's really fun, and it's kind of unique and different that you're going to get in other sort of jobs, but this is a job that you're actually paid, or a degree in which you actually get paid to get those eureka moments, which is really exciting. So from a financial perspective, it is hard to recoup the costs of a PhD, but then there's all these implicit sort of other rewards that you might get. In fact, there was a cool paper by Scott Stern wrote about this. It was in Management Science. It's a really good journal, but showed that there is scientists in general, they pay a cost to get the implicit rewards from the benefit of them actually doing this really fun stuff. All right, so does a PhD make you more employable? Absolutely, it makes you more employable. So it gives you opportunities. That's really what it's all about, right? So, and if you get a PhD and you don't necessarily want that, the PhD on your resume, just take it off. Nobody's going to question it. Nobody's going to say, oh, what did you do for that time? You just don't have to put it on your resume or your CV or whatever you want if you think that you're going to be less employable because you have a PhD. So here's the thing, though, in terms of employment, it changes the way that you're going to get employed, right? So it changes the marketplace for you in terms of what you're going to choose, perhaps, and where you're going to seek positions and what people are looking for you in terms of the things that you're going to be doing. So you're going to be tapping into more of a research and analytical roles, for example, in both industry and academia, depending on what you choose to do. Now, it's much more common if you do, a DBA, Doctorate of Business Administration, to go into industry. PhDs, it's more common to go into academia, but both of them are really focusing on academic or focusing on sort of analytical skills where you're kind of digging down into something. And that's really cool. It's really fun. And the trick, though, is that you have to find those particular positions that are out there. And so the market is going to be thinner for those particular positions. It doesn't mean that you're not going to be able to find ones in other areas. You can always drive a cab if you want, right? Like there's lots of need for that, for people that drive an Uber. But, all sort of jokes aside, it really is up to you in terms of finding those particular opportunities and finding the moments that sort of match your skills. And that's really what you're looking for. And there are a lot of them out there, particularly if you are doing ones that you're doing a PhD or you're focusing on a topic that has a lot of employability, I guess. And that's the key thing that you want to focus on, is for you to focus on the things that make you more employable. And so if you choose a PhD that people don't see the value in it, it's not that you don't see the value, it's other people don't see the value. That's a really important thing, right? Doing a PhD in, I don't know, in underwater singing, opera singing, right? Like nobody's going to see that much value in it, but there's probably a lot of stuff to be understood in terms of acoustic science, right? That in terms of understanding this kind of stuff. So it's just, you have to pick stuff that you can demonstrate and you can show that is important to other people. And if you could do that, then you can clearly have employability. In fact, a lot of PhDs, if you're in the right area, right, if you do a PhD in finance, for example, you'll be being poached within a year or two of even starting the PhD program. It's really hard for people to actually continue on and finish in that degree because they start getting job offers very quickly from people in the finance industry. So if you're looking, and that's even before they're even done, right? Like that's a key thing to look for is, how people are sort of viewing what you're doing, the other people that are viewing what you're doing, and whether you have the fit in terms of what you're going to do, right? So does a PhD actually make you more overqualified? Absolutely not. I think this is the silliest thing I've ever heard of anybody saying in terms of being overqualified in terms of a role that you're in. But here is the rub in terms of understanding whether you're overqualified. So meaning that you have too much knowledge, you have too much skill in a particular area. It's kind of the equivalent is thinking about a physician, right? In a physician, you can become a specialist, and that's what a PhD is. You're a specialist in a particular area. It's very strongly correlated in terms of how to sort of view what this is you're a specialist in a specific area. So to say that a dermatologist is overqualified in the specific thing that they're doing doesn't really make a lot of sense because they just have a lot more knowledge about a specific thing, right? And so you have to demonstrate how this thing is actually relevant to other people. And it's up to you to sort of pick that particular direction that you should go into. And that's a really important thing to sort of think about, is you have to pick things that actually that other people see are valuable, right? Or not only just that other people see are valuable, but you can actually sit down and tell other people this is really important because X, Y, and Z. So you can have this really complicated sort of view on the world, or doing this really complicated science in your PhD. But if you can't sit down and say, well, this is what it is, and you can't tell, a 5-year-old what you're doing and why it's important, I'm serious. If you can't do that, then it's going to be hard for you to demonstrate that to anybody else. So it's up to you to sort of determine or show people that this is actually important, right? So that's why with a PhD in finance, for example, it's really clear that people understand that, oh boy, if you have a PhD in finance, that if you hire that individual, then it's going to cost, I don't know, let's say it costs $100,000 to hire this particular individual. Well, you're almost betting that they're going to make you $500,000 by their knowledge of the marketplace, or knowledge of econometrics or statistics or whatever it is that you're looking at. And that's really what you're looking for. And that's what employers look for in terms of this particular perspective, right? Is if they hire you, are they going to make you a lot more money, or are you going to make them a lot more money by hiring you in that particular role, right? So if it costs $100,000, you better make sure that you can be making $500,000 for the employer. And that's what, with a dermatologist, if you go into a practice, it's pretty clear that if they bring a new dermatologist onto a new clinic, that they're going to make them money, right? So you have to go out with your PhD, whatever you're working on, is demonstrate that this is actually a viable thing that you're working on, right? So if you're doing a PhD in engineering, well, you better show to, maybe it's the nuclear industry, that the nuclear reactors that you can, the problems that you can solve, actually can solve massive problems, and they're going to save them a lot of money, or it's going to greatly improve the safety of their nuclear reactors. And if you could demonstrate that, then hell yeah, they're going to hire you, right? They're going to jump on that chance of hiring you, because you are demonstrating that you're actually really inexpensive in the marketplace. And so it's up to you to sort of demonstrate that. And you're not overqualified in any sort of way. You just know about a little bit more knowledge. So it's kind of really funny in terms of thinking about this sort of overqualification statement, in terms of you have too much knowledge. Well, you have the same knowledge of what everybody else has, and then you just understand the nuances a little bit more than what everybody else has, right? And so you can see maybe you shouldn't do this, or maybe you shouldn't do that, in terms of the ways that in terms of operating going forward. So it's kind of a weird thing that people would even suggest that, or even think that. You by no means are you going to be overqualified, but you have to pick a thing that you can demonstrate is going to be valuable in the marketplace. How long is a PhD after you take a master's? So there's a lot of information out there, and a lot of universities, they're going to say it's going to take 3 to 4 years. I think that's total hocus pocus in this day and age. It's not going to take you 3 to 4 years to get that degree now. Not in the sense that it's going to take you, it's not the sense that it's not possible to get that. It's the fact that to get a job in academia, it's going to take you at least 5 years now to have the track record so you can get a job in academia. Now, if you want to go into industry, and you want just a PhD to go into industry, or a DBA to go into industry, it's, you can do it in 3 years, no problem. You can get out and have a little project and get that thing done and get out. That's really not the big problem. The big problem is actually the market, in terms of you having enough paper publications for academia to get a job in the academic world. And that's really how you get a job, is by writing more papers, having more ideas that are just really cool, and people understand the thing that you're working on. And so that's why it's going to take you 5 years, and, might take a little bit longer than that even. You might have to do a postdoc. It might take you a couple more years to get a job after that. But here's the thing, you have, a professor job in academia is actually a really valuable thing, because people actually listen to you and you get all sorts of different opportunities that are thrown to you that you wouldn't have got before. Like I mentioned before, that I didn't clearly see that there was these opportunities that you can do going forward, and you can kind of make your career once you become a professor if you do that route. But at the same time, it's totally wise to do a PhD for industry. But if you're doing that route, just make sure you go in and get it done really quickly and get out, and you kind of are straightforward at the beginning in terms of what you're thinking of doing. And there are programs out there that are going to be sort of focused on getting you, a PhD or a DBA for industry. And that's really, really beneficial for you, and it's beneficial for them. You just have to find that program, because not everyone. So the major schools, the ones that everybody has heard about, they're gearing for you to actually go into academia at the end of it in terms of getting a PhD, right? So if you want to go to Stanford, just be prepared that they want you to go in, do a PhD to become another professor, which is a really valuable career. And there's lots of benefit from that. So just plan on, probably about 5 years. More than likely it's anywhere between 4 to 7 years in terms of when you're actually going to get an academic job. Anybody that tells you less than that is, they're kind of kidding themselves. In terms of academia, industry, yeah, you could do it in 3 to 4 years, probably no problem. It shouldn't be that hard in terms of getting out and getting an industry job at the end of it. In terms of, what kind of jobs can you get when you do a PhD? This is a really important one for a lot of people, because you often think people just get a professor job and then they just work in the, for me, I just work in a business school and that's it, right? I'm just some high and mighty professor, which is a really good career, by the way. And professor jobs are really interesting because there's huge, so it's big business, right? If you're in academia, it is big business. And if you don't realize that, just go and look at how many billions of dollars that are being spent, trillions of dollars that are being spent around the world on higher education. Huge business, right? So, and there's all sorts of rules whenever that happens in terms of people doing, maybe you don't like research, right? So you go in and then you become it's a dean, for example. You do a dean role, or you do some sort of administration role in a university, or you do more of on the teaching side in a university. And there's all these kind of things that you can do. There's tons of different roles. Maybe you go into the commercialization office and you work in that kind of area where you're giving advice to, maybe it's budding inventors, for example, and you're helping them, become inventors in the university and transferring this knowledge and information to other places around the world. And that's super cool positions, right? Like that can be done in any university or college around the world. And that is, having a PhD is going to benefit you in the whole academic world in terms of status and ranking and stuff like that. But in industry, there's tons of different jobs that you can get in terms of, they're going to be focused more on the analytical side. So normally what ends up happening, at least if you do a PhD in business or a DBA in business, Doctorate of Business Administration. So what ends up happening is you get a analytical job for a couple of years. And this is really common. I've seen this on most of the people that I've seen go into industry. This is what they do, is they get an analytical job for a couple of years, and then they get vastly quickly promoted to senior roles in the organization, simply because people don't have the credentials that you have. And you have already figured out how to work, right? Like that's a big thing. It's a strong signal that if you do a PhD, you know how to work, that other people just, they're just going to be clueless on that. And so it's really hard, actually. That's what I'm going to point out. It's really hard to do a PhD. So once you learn how to work and get through, then, it's a signal that you can be a good hard worker and, demonstrate that you are valuable to the organization, and you quickly rise to the ranks. At most organizations is going to happen, especially ones that are more science oriented or maybe consulting oriented. Management consulting is another field that a lot of people go into. Maybe they start their own consulting firm. That's hard, right? It's like starting your own little business. it takes a long time, and you're going to be poor for a very long time before you actually start earning some sort of benefit from that, or if ever, right? So a lot of people would go into different management consulting firms, depending on whatever PhD that they have, as long as it's pretty relevant, right? So in business, you go into management consulting like a Bain and Co. or McKinsey and Co. I don't know, Accenture, all these sort of major consulting firms where you're working with like accountants and things like that and giving direction on where they should go. And often you raise to the ranks pretty quickly as well, and you become a partner at the consulting firms pretty quickly, just simply because you know how to work. And you generally will get some ideas that other people don't have. The other route that is really not that common, but a couple of people I've seen do this in terms of industry, is they will write books, and they will be sort of the guru in the sort of book writing world, right? And they go on the conference circuit and all that kind of stuff, speaker circuit. Not that common, really tough to do that route. The more common one is kind of like management consulting, or going into industry, finding like an IBM, a large corporation that can understand what you have and why they need you. So I would go on, if you are a PhD or if you're thinking about that, go on to like, Google website, Facebook, IBM, any sort of heavy industry. They might look for different sort of needs for, it might be, I don't know, Toshiba, for example, Hitachi. I don't know. I think that's the right one. The heavy industry company that's out from Japan, right? Like there's a bunch of different companies that would hire individuals like that, that have that particular degree, and you can sort of choose to go that route if you want to. And the last one is going into government. A lot of analytical roles exist in government, where they're analyzing, different economic models, for example. Maybe you're working with the electrical industry, and you have to model different sort of, prices for the electrical grid and things like that. So you would have that role if you would do a PhD and went into government roles as doing something like that. Unless you are a political person, you probably wouldn't do the politics part of it, but you would be a bureaucrat, right? So those are the people that work behind the scenes that actually write papers and stuff like that, I did that for a while, for a year, before I did my PhD. It was interesting. Let's just say this. And there's a lot of politics at all levels, and some of it good, a lot of it bad. Anyways, but that's what I wanted to say is, should you actually do a PhD? It depends. It's really complicated in terms of whether it's the right answer for you. And you have to make that decision. You have to be really into it, whether you want to do it. Now, is a doctorate a waste of time? Again, it depends on what you're going to do. If you're that kind of person that just wants to be handed something, and life's going to be on the easy street once they do this particular degree, yeah, it's going to be a total waste of time for you. Don't do it at all. But if you want to work at it and you want to challenge, you want to keep going, and you're the type of person that's kind of adventurous, and you like a really tough challenge, and you like to keep pushing forward, even once you're done, it could accelerate your career in a lot of different ways. But it's up to you. You got to be that right person. And now I've been around enough where I've seen all sorts of different kinds of people doing a PhD, or have tried, different routes. And, some, I would say half the people, if not more, struggle. And then there are, some people that do really well. So there's huge selection effects, right? In terms of what's that mean is that there's a lot of people that try, and they don't get through. And then the people that do get through, they continue and excel, and they can go in different various degrees of how much they excel in different ways. And that's really what you're looking at. It's like, the equivalent, or a way to think about this is like, what is it, Hell Week? When people join the Navy SEALs, is not as extreme by any sort of means, but it's kind of the same way, right? Like a lot of people, I think it's like 95% of the people don't make it through Hell Week, which is that what they're up for like over 100 hours straight, doing all sort of activities and stuff like that. And most people will drop out, and that's kind of what's going to happen when you do a PhD as well. You'll see lots of people just kind of give up. It's just not for them. And so if they do that, it's not a waste of time in any sort of way, right? You have this knowledge that's stuck in your head. So if you've done it for a year and you accumulate this knowledge, it can still really benefit you. And it's up to you to choose what you're going to do with that knowledge and go forward. All right. If you like this video, give me a thumbs up and do subscribe to the YouTube channel. I do appreciate it. Take care and have a wonderful day. Bye.